Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Delicately Wild. Today we have Melissa on the show, and Melissa is one of the AZURITE Temple students. We're actually coming to the final closing ceremony of our 7-month coaching container. And yeah, there's a couple of participants that didn't quite have their podcast episode recording just yet. So right in the nick of time, we've got Melissa. Took a bit of nudging to get in here on the show. But again, just to reintroduce everybody to what this is about, Delicately Wild is really just a conversation among people, woman and man of mankind, that are having spiritual experiences or experiences that we would call an awakening or a shift in perspective, a paradigm shift. And really, these are just conversations. Please understand that, as women and men of mankind, you have all rights and no obligations. And so from that perspective, it's take what resonates, leave the rest. We're really just moving into conversation about things that are happening within our existentiality, within our belief systems, and really just allowing everybody an opportunity to have a little bit of perspective. There's so much information out there, there's so much data, and yet people are having pretty mystical experiences, as well as pretty hard experiences into their spiritual reality or their spiritual nature. So welcome, Melissa, and we're gonna kind of just I don't really prepare much for these. Obviously, I know the people that I'm chatting to, most of them. So I guess a nice place, or what I've done with each other person, is to say, hey, introduce yourself, and kind of where would you like to begin in terms of your awakening or whatever it is you wish to talk about. What's in your field at the moment?
Hi. Um, sure, where to begin? Let's start at the beginning. Um,
Birth.
no, I want to say probably a year ago, as it is now, this
Yeah.
month. I had been going through some really tough um life changes, I guess, if I can call it that.
Bit of a dark night.
Very, very deep and dark. Um, I'd been in a 10-year relationship with my partner, um, and I'd woken up and he had died next to me in our bed. I guess that's the starting points of, like, I guess, me waking up too
Yeah.
and kind of having to go through these now life experiences of dealing with all of that, moving out of our house, losing my dog, um, and I say lose
Yeah.
loosely. um, and say 4 or 5 months later, just coming to the point of, like, I do not want to wake up like this every day anymore. I don't want to feel these feelings. Um, and I refuse to spend another year feeling like this.
Mm.
Um, and quite beautifully, I was, at the time, I was still studying, and I was, let's talk about micro or macro to micro. I was fixated on going into such depth of what I was trying to write and not getting any further in what I was doing. And this dove flew into my bedroom and landed on something that my partner had made. Um, so it kind of gave me this, like, bird's eye perspective, like step back a little bit. And so I took a little break. Well, I guess not a break, but I actually found your video on, I think it was on social media. Um, and you spoke for 20 minutes about breathwork in detail. And it made me really emotional, and I thought to myself, like, that's what I need to do. That's the answer. And I guess that was the beginning of how I came to get here. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to say you mentioned that to me on our personal
Mm.
chat the other day, and I didn't actually give credit to it, and I just want to say thank you so much. And even when you shared the message to me, I could feel the kind of, I guess, like from the empathic space, how you
Yeah.
received the video. And I know exactly which one. I was in Thailand. I know exactly what I was wearing. I know which video it was. So thank you so much. I mean, and even when you sent the message to me the other day, it felt like that was like such a profound, because you said you rewatched it as well.
A few times. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess like moving forward from, obviously there's often in spirituality, in the beginning it feels like a bit of a a washing machine, to say the least, but kind of when you come out of it into your integration and stabilization phases, we move to the sense of clarity, and we start to begin to make decisions, and we look at everything from the perspective of it really looking like textbook stuff. So when you dive into spiritual awakening, it's like there's a massive trauma or a massive uncovering, a massive paradigm shift. It doesn't necessarily need to be a trauma, but trauma is relative,
Yeah.
um, it's relative. And so, we go through this shift, which can get as deep as to put the label of dark night of the soul on it. I definitely feel if a death is kind of sprung into your reality like that, like you had, I would definitely call it a dark night of the soul. And then we come to kind of a space of looking for a solution. And for you, it was breath work, which is really fucking
Yeah.
cool, because obviously, just to share, we won't go into the details, but your partner that passed, had done some medicine work with me prior to, many years before. And yeah, so I know within your consciousness stream, you knew that I did medicine work, but yet it was the breathwork video that kind of stuck with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I invited you to come, and I know at the time you were really like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm ready for this, and but yet you're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard space, and it was your highest timeline to be there, I believe.
Yeah.
You want to speak us through that first breathwork ceremony, that group that you joined? I just
Yeah.
want
I
to
think,
share as well, in terms of the frequency of the container. um, this particular breath work was in the Western Cape, and it was a precursor to us going into mushroom and medicine work in the evening, that Melissa didn't join, because I know her energy senses are really open, and that was not what was required, for her healing at that stage. So yeah.
I think, just to go back a little bit, the medicine work that Brad had done with you, um, that to me was everything, you know? And because I'd shifted away from, I wanted to, and I guess also watching your talk that you had about breath work, and in that video you spoke about, um the fact that we can reach that without the medicine too. So
Yeah,
that's what I actually, and I wanted to have or I wanted to experience that within myself, and
yeah,
not having, yeah. Um, the first breath work that I did, yeah, that was, um, I didn't know what to expect. It was crazy. It was amazing. It was, um, I felt really out there. Um, yeah, and I guess my idea of, when people pass, you kind of have like your perspective of what you've experienced or your idea of things. So for me, the experience that I had was my partner and my dog both sitting there with me in the room.
Mm.
Quite, it was quite a visual experience. Um, and then the physical aspects of it, I released a lot of trauma. Um, and it was just that was, I guess, the beginning or the first step to what was to come. And I guess that's also how it was trusting the process, which is, you say let's trust the process, but then when you're in the process, it's pretty wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild. I just want to say, Melissa, thank you, because at that timing, those of you that don't know, I live a very nomadic life. So I'm only in a space and a place for a certain amount of time. And how I like to work with clients is pretty long term. Yes, I can invoice you, or as woman of mankind claim compensation for that which is my labor and that which is deserving of exchange, and that's great. I know I do a good job, and that little shift may be amazing, but there's so much to it, right? There's so
Yeah.
much. And I feel like Melissa is such a wonderful person to have online today, because I don't feel like at any point in time from where you are at to coming to the first breathwork session that you would have any sort of idea or construct in your mind, spirit, soul, any of it in any way, shape, or form of where we've ended up now, let's say a year later. And of
Yeah.
course, particularly linking in your experience with the Azurite Temple, and the enormous amount of growth that you've gone through from your initial sort of dark night space to this point. So maybe you want to just touch base on that aspect of trust, because that's how we kind of entered into this flow, because there was
Yeah.
and I guess part of this is saying, like, I two beings or two energetic frequencies will come into each other's reality. um, from my perspective, that consciousness that has more awareness, that is more clear in their auric field, that is sitting strongly in their pillar of light, that sometimes goes by the title of, master teacher, master healer, or shaman or medicine woman, such as someone like myself. I kind of have an idea of what a soul, what a person is going through, what they're capable of, what their higher sensory um, aspects of themselves look like, how they may manifest once certain healing and trauma has been trauma released, healing done. I have an idea of that because that's my job. But when I'm speaking to someone that is in a completely different reality construct, to kind of go through that, because that was kind of the dance that we did, and it
Yeah.
required you to trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does one
Yeah.
come
Like I
to
said,
that trust?
I think from the get-go, if I hadn't reached the point where I was kind of like, I do not want to feel like this anymore, and this is not the reality that I want, I would have never, I would have never trusted the process.
Yeah.
So me surrendering fully and saying, okay, cool, let me come physically to the space. And then thereafter we had online
Mm.
sessions. And that in itself was amazing because it felt like the space that you held was, it didn't really matter whether you were there physically or not.
Yeah,
That was the crazy thing as well.
yeah, this is why I say
Um,
congratulations, because, and that's why I mentioned the nomadic aspect, is sometimes
yeah,
not all souls, it depends on the individual. This work is very niche. Each blueprint is completely different. But for you to have trusted in, like, we're going to do exactly that same level of power and
yeah,
embodied frequency that you experienced in person with me, we're now going to do that online. And this is why, because I've set the container, etc., etc., etc. It should be as if I'm with you in the room, and that's what you're attesting to, which is great. You know, not many people, I mean, I remember my first kind of online stuff where it was more with psychics in the beginning of my world, where I was like, no, I'd rather be in person with you because I want you to read me, you know. And then it became like more I want to say intergalactic, but it's not, multidimensional is the word I'm looking for, and intergalactic, right? And then I was like, oh, I really need to look at my belief systems, because if everything is energy and there's no separation, and I'm sitting with a master guide or teacher, then, and they say they can do this thing, then yes, actually, I totally get it now. And I've created a limiting belief. So I just wanted to say congrats. I did interrupt you though, so please do go on.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you for, um, where were we after that? I think
The
my
online
breath was kind
sessions,
of,
as if I was sitting. Yeah.
And I think the second one, I think, kind of opened up my, what would I call it? That space, that visionary space that I could perceive things in.
Yes.
And it was a kind of like a little taste of what I could experience. But at the time, because of what I was experiencing in the physical reality, everything was quite fragmented, which is what was shown to me in that breathwork session. And then the last one was probably the most like profound experience that I'd had. And how could I describe it? I could describe it as watching a movie. So I could feel that I was there. I had you came, your presence was there, you weren't physically there. It was almost as though I could feel you everywhere as you were holding the space. My mother and my father came in, and that was also, I guess, the beginning work of the trauma and the wounds that I needed to clear. And that to me, and just to be able to see it as though my eyes were open, that was like, okay, so this is what breath work actually is.
And now if you were to say, okay, cool, so this is breath work, but within our teachings of the law of one, we would say there's no separation. And within that, which we've been going through in AZURITE, like how would you now like view like the descriptors of like, okay, is breathwork, or is it all just one thing, and we're learning the mechanics of understanding our systems or reading a blueprint, or like I know my question is not too clear.
I think then there was definitely for me there was like a separation, because that's what I'd experienced.
Yes, of course.
You know, and when I started the AZURITE Temple, I don't think that there's a separation. No.
Yeah, I guess that's
I think that
because I mean,
think
we've
that
gone
with
through
breath work,
deep meditation
it's more of a
spaces.
release of trauma.
Yeah.
But the meditation space, I don't think that there's, it's all one. It's all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and then with AZURITE, through the meditations, or the meditations that we did within the space, it was definitely because I was more I was focused on the physical things around me and the story that I was going through. That's what I was seeing, or that's what I was being shown.
Yeah.
So when we were in the AZURITE Temple, it was much more, I guess, how would I describe that?
You were dealing with your stuff.
And I don't want to call it grief, because I don't like to think of it as that. It's not grief and it's not loss, but that story that I was going through, I guess I was starting to see, you know, God consciousness or source. That's how I would describe it. It wasn't me with, you know, these
Got you. So it's
people
like a
or that story. It
reframe.
was more, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to kind of, hold on, I want to be wise with my words because it's not about marketing. Like, if you were to share a message to anyone, have a really, like, if you were in your, not were, you are in your God state, it's never separate from you, but like, if you had like one opportunity to impact anybody or many at whatever education level or system that they're in, or consciousness level, like, what is the message from your heart that you would give in terms of what you've learned over the last year? And obviously that includes your life, but what is the message you would give?
Sure, that's quite um, I guess, sure, that's difficult.
Of course, because
Um,
it's asking to give your truths, and
yeah.
some truths may be hard to hear. Um,
Let me try and, can I say this from my personal perspective of what
Please do.
I think that, we can, if I look back a year ago or even a year and a half ago, I could continue that. I could keep looping the same pattern, the same story, doing the same things, and then getting really frustrated with the things that I'm doing, the behaviors. And it is all a loop. But to come out of that and to see that there's like it's not this. It's like
Mm.
um and I guess that also opens up so much more perspective. It gives you, yeah, to be in your heart space. I think that was really how I can describe it.
Mm.
For the first time to actually be coming and yeah, living in your heart space instead of in your mind or in
Your story.
yeah, your story.
Or your
I
victim
think that's the
victimizer. Yeah. I am so sorry to interrupt. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching and listening to our Delicately Wild podcast. This is just a short interruption to say, please, from the bottom of my heart, if you could like, share, or do whatever it is that is required on this particular social media platform, I would greatly appreciate it, as this content does kind of get squashed within the algorithms. And the other part of this is to just remind you that I have a beautiful coaching container coming up called the AZURITE Temple. If you are interested in expansion, consciousness, existentiality, the nature of this reality, and really digging deep into healing work, uncovering, and mostly embodiment work within a supported community and a high vibrational container, then you might want to touch base with me, and you are free to ask any questions. Thank you so much for your time. Please do enjoy the rest of the podcast. Ciao.
very much so. I
Yeah.
spoke about that this morning. That's actually,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I can't, there aren't really words to describe what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I guess another way, like, I feel like you within this last year, have, shifted through the loop, or let's say gone through, integrated, observed victim victimizer patterns and things like that. But then you've also received tests. And I kind of just want to speak to this because, it's like such a words get used in spiritual communities, like initiations, like I'm going through a
Mhm.
big initiation, or I'm moving through a big process. And it's like, what do these things look like? And I feel with you, there were many times that a lesson was learned and then the exam was put in front of you.
And that's not to say that they don't keep happening.
Of course.
You know,
Of course.
the same thing may show up time and time again, and it doesn't. Yeah, it's also not to say that I'm like now perfect and that everything's cool and no, like those things still show up. I don't always face them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I fall back. You know, it's not to say that like everything's super cool and life's amazing now. No,
Yeah.
it's still work. Um,
I mean, I think
yeah.
that's a really profound statement. So to say, it's not to say everything's just super cool and life's amazing,
No.
because people would look at this and be like, okay, well, you want to sell me your course, or like you are frustrated that I am asleep, yet look at your space, look at your reality. Like, what do you, from your perspective, like, what do you think happens when one is having a an evolutionary challenge?
Um,
How would you describe it? Because there's this aspect of you that said, I can't describe it, it's so big, but I can say that it's about being in the heart. Yet our next kind of discussion is to say, hey,
yeah.
yes, I'm aware of this. I'm aware of the nature of macro to micro. I understand that I need to be in my heart and that I can reframe things and look at grief rather as God than a negative connotation as of grief. And I'm not
Yeah.
bypassing the fact that there's grief and that there is confusion within my spiritual journey, and that there is temptation, and that there is conflict. Oh my God, especially now. Wow. And I speak to this wow micro to macro. Like, my wow is more from a personal perspective of observing conflict within spiritual communities and spiritual families. That is like wowing me because it's so much closer to home than the wow of
Mm.
wars that have been going on forever. So, so we've got this concept of, it's such a big, beautiful space, and it draws you into being heart-centered and to observe your victimizer profiles. Yet we're also saying, and this can bring us so much evolution and empowerment. Yet we're also saying, just to let you know, like, not everything is cool along the path, and it's not all hunky-dory. And, I guess let's speak about the difficulties, or that which
I think if I
yeah,
can describe it, it's kind of like, a year ago, a year and a half ago, it would be easier to just stick my head in the sand and be like, that's not mine. I'm not gonna hold myself accountable. Um, like you're the problem, you're worse than I am, that whole story.
yeah,
So I think to take accountability, and maybe that wouldn't have happened if I didn't experience death in such a way.
yeah,
I don't think maybe I would still be doing that, but to hold myself accountable for the things that I have been a part of,
yeah,
that I think is the greatest work, because
yes,
I can't just say no.
yeah,
No, I have to look at myself. I have to look at my how I'm showing up in the world, how I'm moving, um, and then everything else that comes forward, like these initiations that we speak of. I guess that's the way that I'm trying to um bring it up, is that when those things now show up, I have to face
You're
them head
why
on.
your template has been upgraded, and
Yeah.
therefore you're coming from a space of more wisdom, having had the experience. And
Yes.
now, it's a different set of choices, because it's not like the child anymore that can say, well, I didn't know, I hadn't learned that yet. And so, I put my hand on the stove because I didn't know. Now we
Mhm.
know, and we've learned, and we've had the pain. And now, like you say, the responsibility sits with us.
Well, I
Um,
guess it's not even so much that I didn't know. I think it would be more that because I'm so used to that loop, it's easier to just continue with the loop.
yeah,
So how I like to describe this is putting on something like your favorite piece of clothing. It's the most comfortable thing, so you just go with that.
Yes.
Um, and that's not okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And I guess it's also come full circle, I guess, what, 2 weeks ago? These initiations have now come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, observe patterns, right? I mean, even it's interesting because we really do become a master of it all. You're becoming a master of space, time, observation, witnessing, participating, everything.
yeah,
And I often say, people are like, what does it mean to read the field? For me, I'm like, just read the patterns. And in order to observe a pattern, one inevitably has to have some sort of memory of the past within a now timeline and a no time 0 point space.
yeah,
Understanding that past, so, and it can be year cycles, 3 month cycles, whatever, that past has come to kind of close. And this is how we start learning about timelines and things like that. I remember in the beginning of our quest into Azurite Temple, there was this big kind of flood of questioning from you, really observing different spiritual teachers and beginning to ask, like, is this person, I think the language we were using at the time, is this person inverted? What about this person? Is this person holding a distortion, etc., etc., etc.? I feel like there was a little bit of back and forth that we had in the beginning while you were really like,
coming into that, yeah.
yeah, exploding through the
Yeah.
information and doing a lot of your own personal research and shit. Yeah, do you want to talk to us about, or talk to people about that process of what was happening in your research mind, your data analysis mind, and
It's quite funny that you bring that up because that stems from I guess my father's side, and I'm up here at the moment visiting him, and we have had these conversations, and I mean we share similar views where his are a lot more, there's no black or white. I
yeah,
mean there is no gray, there's only black and white. And I guess that's why I needed to have the fact, but does it really matter in the greater scheme of things? Maybe not. Not
yeah,
at that point, no.
yeah,
Um, but I guess for me to understand what it is that I'm going through in the micro, I need to have the macro understanding of things.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think maybe being fixated on, this teaching, is this the be all and end all? Everything is linked. Everything is, whether it's um
yeah. It comes back to responsibility, right? So all the data
yeah,
is there for all different Christian sciences to Keylontic sciences to the freedom teachings to Metatronic teachings to Melchizedek Anu teachings, this, that, the next, da, 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 archangelics, etc., etc. We have all the data, but does it change the title of who you are at any point in time to adorn the data as yours? And how do we dance and weave around all the information that the soul is seeking? How do we sift through it? And even if there's no how, let's say we do sift through it and we gain information. It's just
yeah,
data, right? What do we do with the data? We begin to observe our patterns within our own microcosmic field, because that's what we have accountability for, right? Just you do you, boo. And from there, we inevitably spiritually grow. But I think there's this like maybe attachment that if we do this course and that course and this goddess and priestess course and we go to this ayahuasca journey and all of this, then we tick a box, a dopamine box, and we now
yeah,
are more spiritual. But it's just a constant fucking process of moving through a spiral of creation, which is information, which is data. which is either going to be perceived as positive or negative, which is going to direct you in a certain way. And ultimately, you will be tested by the judge that is you.
Yeah, it's
Right?
all you.
All you.
It's all you. I think another reason that I got so stuck into the mechanics of things was because of what I was experiencing in my dream space and in the meditation space. So the things that I was being shown or that were coming through, I needed to make sense of that.
Be more specific. Give us an example.
So in my dream space, I don't know if you recall, that dream about, I guess, like there was this tidal wave, and because my dream space is super vivid, I woke up and I was emotional, I cried. Um, and there was, so within that dream space, there was this tidal wave, was an underground parking, and then I went into, I'd come up from that, the wave had missed us, and I went into this like compound,
Your military complex.
hospital space, yeah, with yeah, not very good things happening
You
specifically
can
to
speak to
children.
it because it is, you know, it's powerful and it is happening.
Yeah. So it was sex trafficking with children, and within that dream space there were people that were within my daily like understanding of the world, like faces that I could recognize.
Mm.
Um and that's not to say that those people are involved, but it was just something that I found familiar.
Yeah.
Um so I guess that was one of the points of reference of me having to understand like what is going on in the world, how is like what is the good and bad? Is
Yeah, I
there good
guess
and
this is
bad?
actually a,
That whole construct.
yeah, I think this is actually a really good point, and it's why I kind of
Yeah.
held space for you to speak it because, you know, it's not, we're not at a time where we need to be afraid of the shadow and to speak that which is happening.
Yeah.
And it is happening. I mean, one of our meditations we did was the inner earth clearing. I didn't
Yeah. I remember that.
superimpose through that meditation because I, you know, I wanted each soul's consciousness um, to do and to do exactly as was required at whatever level within the one. But I was always curious as to yours and particularly the stream. My point is, prior to you kind of opening up to this information, having this experience with yourself and me, that is you anyway, were you in awareness of those very darker aspects of what's happening in the shadows of our reality?
Yes. I was aware. I had I have quite a large understanding, and I guess that's maybe why I went so deep into all of the questioning,
Yes.
was because I had that understanding before. So for me to then experience that in a dream space, and before before I'd entered into any breath work or any meditation work at all, my dream space was very much light, like things that would be myself and a friend doing this and that.
Yeah.
It wasn't deep things that I could, you know,
Feel you were
like,
accessing like a
yeah,
subconscious aspect
yes.
of your psyche or your consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm trying to say. So for me to experience that, and again, within that realm of things, I was also experiencing the complete like polar opposite of that. So in the meditation space, I was also um I guess having an understanding of, if I can describe it like this, when you die, and this is just my personal experiences. When you die, it's not like there's not going to be an archangel. There aren't these these labels and these things. So my then experience of that was I could physically see the consciousness or the beings. So all of those other beliefs then did fall away. And
Mm.
that's, I guess, also why I had so many questions about those teachings.
Yeah.
Um,
Because also
I
I feel
can't, I can never jump on board with something that I don't experience myself.
yeah.
Um, so my belief system has to be that I've experienced it, and then I can, follow that.
Yeah, which is tricky
Um,
within the spiritual space because it
yeah.
requires so much trust, right? So it's like, for example's sake, you've mentioned archangels. I can't, there was a bit of, or from my perspective, I feel like there's a little clarity missing, but I didn't want to pull you out of your share. But I know in the beginning you were asking a lot about Metatron or Metatronic reversals and things like that. And I'm assuming,
Yeah.
like you've said, it's because you had quote unquote experiences with archangels.
No, it was because of, I guess, the symbolism of it.
Okay.
Um, that was initially, we see the symbols. We go to festivals and we see it everywhere, or we see them with yoga studios,
Mm.
and that was initially my
Yeah.
um what was the symbol?
Metatron's cube.
The Metatron's cube,
Yeah.
specifically because Brad had a tattoo of that. So
Okay.
that's where and I don't think
This
that
gets interesting now because
yeah,
I mean, from the lessons of that and diving into, that which you've been learning about galactic history with, and let's just say, like, to the best of your capability within your life as just a normal person that also has a job and is completing studying, not like, diving deep into write notes and things, but from
mm,
because I've also had this experience with exes where I've now observing what a fallen angelic is, what an angelic is, how we create distinctions, how there may have been uh, cloning and artificial ascended masters and archangelics representing within a fourth dimensional field, that are actually fooling us and tricking us and things like that, and how very similar as your partner to my ex-partner, observing this information and data now and then going like,
yeah,
holy shit, now I understand what a fallen angelic is. And it's not that these beings in our lives are evil beings. No, no, no.
no,
It just helps us to kind of understand more about their genetics, understand more about the pain and suffering that they've had on the planet in this incarnation because of their fall, and getting
yeah.
trapped in the darkness of the underworld and all of these places and spaces, and how much it takes to step into the light, into your true Iani, angelic light body. Because I think that is like the nitty gritty,
Sure.
all of it. Like,
Yeah.
we've spoken pretty beautifully and fluffy and it's great, but it's like, I think it's nice to have come to this juncture of like, fuck, during all this data accumulation, this is what I fucking began to understand to the best of my capability.
So, I mean, I won't get into the story of it or the specifics, but what you've just described is, um, I think maybe before I would have continued empathetically to stick with that story, and I would have chosen it time and time again. And now that it's being presented to me, and like I've said to you, if I close my eyes, and I don't think it's specifically with that person, if I close my eyes and it's that frequency, I know what that feels like now. And
Mm,
it does take a lot of It takes a lot of balls to be like, no, I cannot. I cannot. Whether I'm here to help you or not, I will get stuck in this loop again.
Okay, so I just want to sort of clarify, because I know what you're speaking about, just to bring
Yeah.
clarity. It's like, I've spoken about people having been in our lives. We've done the hard work, or they have unfortunately exited, like Melissa's situation, fortunately or unfortunately, and perfectly and divinely, right?
Yeah.
But so we've now gathered data. Our consciousness is expanding. We're going through darkness. We're observing the shadow. Through observing the shadow, we're diving into more and more information. As the consciousness expands, that information is leading us to understanding the history of this planetary system more, which is allowing us to ask questions about the nature of reality. How long has this been going on? The seeding of our humanity, the seeding of human angelics on this planet. And so we're observing and we're reading the data and we're learning the data and we're dreaming about things. And the symbols and symbology are being presented in accordance with that data that we're reading. And what we're beginning to understand is that, holy shit, we've been in a fuck ton of timelines of wars.
Yeah.
It feels like we're repeating everything. I'm going mad and I'm looping, but I'm taking accountability because I am God, I am sovereign, and I am free. But through this, now when I observe the trickery and the inversions that this quote unquote reality is now exposing, I now see that these people in my life have been holding that signature frequency, or holding what
Yeah.
that symbol means, right? And so what Melissa was speaking to is like, when another pattern data set comes into, I don't wish to dehumanize, it's just for the sakes of this conversation. When another being comes in and replicates that frequency of that distorted pattern or coding, we now are like, no, because we're kind of unraveling everything from like the persona, the titles, to the being, the Christed child, the masculine and feminine, but also going, that is true, I see that, but within you, you're holding distortions, and I've already done that test, although we will
And
again
also just
and
to,
again and
sorry
again
to interrupt you,
go
but
for it.
also because I've held that frequency
Thank
in
you.
myself.
Of course.
So for me to have that frequency and to know it deeply, and then for it to be in someone else,
You can
and to
recognize it.
see that, to recognize it, yes.
Yeah.
There's one of two things, or two things. The first thing is that me jumping back into that, am I really helping you or myself even?
Or you're going
And
into
number two,
rescue. Yeah.
yeah, am I rescuing you, or am I gonna just be mirroring that frequency again and
Yeah.
looping again and again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was the greatest.
So crazy.
Everything else kind of like falls away, and you can actually just stand at that point and be like, okay,
Yeah.
this is
Because what are we trying to
this
do
is actually what I
here?
revolved my life around for a very long time. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was another person, but with myself,
Mm.
I kept that loop going for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holding the distortions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing here? And ultimately, we're trying to remove pain and suffering from
Yeah.
our experience as much as possible, with the simultaneous wisdom that pain and suffering is inevitable in the physical plane. That is just the way it is. We are filtering data systems through an old model that is under the illusionary trick that everything is still separate, and it's not. But to be in our God state, mind, body, heart, is at all points in time, at any conflict, is not easy for most people on the planet. So what are we trying to do? Alleviate pain and conflict. How do we do that? We have a right relationship to self and the right relationship to God. And we're speaking about these like recognition of these frequencies and these tests, initiations, or opportunities that come upon our path where we can, where it feels like the right thing to do would be to help that person. But we now have to ask, well, if everything is an inversion, then maybe I need to reframe all of my initial answers. And so we start questioning our intuition. We maybe go through gaslighting. It's intense. It doesn't have to be intense, but it can be intense. What I'm trying to allude to here is our last session on the Azurite was the law of mankind. And I've been going through a lot more of the coursework. And today, while I was listening, there was, we're moving through questions and answers with the coaches. And a question was asked, like, do you want every man or woman of mankind to learn the law of mankind? And the coaches said, well, that is not my intention. Would it be beneficial? Would the byproduct of that be beneficial? Well, I cannot say, and it would be unloving of me to want every man and woman of mankind to come and learn this content. Why would it be unloving and unkind? Because inevitably, every man or woman is free, and they are there to learn through all of their experiences. And I, as man, would not like to take that away from them. And then, of course, we bring in the energy work and say, at time of resonance, when they wish to come to remedy of conflict and controversy in their lives, they will find this material. Up until then, they are free man and woman to explore their desires, right? Because it's what is the soul desire? So we desire something, and then we're in complete the hall of mirrors as to what that is showing up. Is it showing our greed? Is it showing our manipulation? Is it showing our shadow? Is it showing our lust? Is it showing our desire? Is it in alignment with God or the laws of man and woman of mankind? So yeah, it's like often we think these acts of loving kindness and rescuing are the highest timeline, but it's often observing that in that moment that we come to narcissistic rescue, possibly, that we disempower that soul and we take them away from what they're learning to master. For my ex, I feel like he was mastering avoidance and negotiation. So negotiating himself out of all shadow work at any potential time on planet Earth within the time space that I was sharing with him, and that's what he was mastering. And I was possibly mastering holding a fucking big space or mastering observation of my empathic narcissism, to want to come to remedy of the situation of avoidance of shadow work and all of this. So I feel like coming to a closing here, it's like there's just so many nuggets of fucking
so many nuggets.
there's so many nuggets of awesomeness in this reality. I really feel that. And do I go through shadow? Hell yes. Do I die many times? Indeed I do. It humbles me. But I don't know, man, there's a part of me that I feel can really be the neutral observer and kind of just applause it all and be like, y'all gonna learn or y'all gonna carry on looping, and that's it, like, and I'm here if you need me to be woman of mankind who sometimes acts in the role of title healer and way shower. Should you require me for that, cool, let's connect. But yeah. That was a big round closing there of this chat. Is there anything else that in terms of like, I guess that's what you've taken from 7 months of really committed study, to this container space, what have you taken? Like, what's your nugget from that?
Wow. I guess hmm, to I'm starting to see things a little clearer. There's a lot more clarity. Not a little, there's a lot more clarity. Um, and the nugget, I guess, is, we speak about stepping out of the loop, but there are little loops within the bigger loop. So working through those loops, I guess, it's been, yeah, it doesn't feel so chaotic. It feels like I am aligned and centered, and yeah.
And if people were to say, hey, Melissa, like, we've noticed such a change in you over the year, like, what have you been doing? How would you verbalize that to someone that asks? Because I mean, for me,
um
I would need to evaluate, okay, cool, where's your level of consciousness at? Can I start bringing in and mentioning the law of one, the emerald order, this and that, or it does none of that matter? And I'm just saying, actually, I'm just practicing self-awareness at a very high level, because that's also
yeah, I think how we started this chat, I actually did start a little bit in the story. So I wouldn't start there. I think I would just say, I'm observing myself. I've been
that's what I'm.
observing myself, and I have a lot more self-awareness, and I've come to that point, and everything else I bring back to that.
And I mean,
Um,
within the Azurite, like we often, what's the word I want to use? Hold on,
yeah.
anchor the. Hold on, this is where words get very important. We anchor the authority of the statement of consent that we are God, right? And the addition to that is God sovereign and free.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty wild anchoring of a statement, because I said we're anchoring in the authority of the knowing that we are God, or the consent. We consent to be the Christ, right? Has that been a difficult process for you?
No, it hasn't. I think that I think all the other things, the stories, the looping, that's difficult. I think anchoring is, I feel, I'm feeling that.
Mm.
It's not, it's not something
Right.
that's in my head. It's not something that's verbal, that's a belief. Like if
Yeah,
I can describe it like that.
yeah, yeah.
So to feel that
Because I could have
within
said
my
we're
body,
anchoring in a belief system, right?
yeah.
But the reason I was so careful about my words was, I mean, I'll have to go back and replay it, but I said something like anchoring in the authority of the consent that we are God. Let me just make sense. Check. Anchoring in the authority of God with consent. So our consent, individualized consciousness consent to
Yeah.
be the authority of God in the Christ, in its organic structure. Even that sentence sounds ridiculous. It sounds like a mouthful, but when we're really working with frequencies, words, language, law,
Mm.
it all really makes a difference, because I could have said the belief system that you are God, but I feel like the word belief system, or one thing I know for damn sure, is that next thing that mat is pulled from under you and all of your belief systems come crashing down, and you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what God is anymore, so it's like well, if God is me, this is an easier anchoring. It's not an idealized man in the sky. It's God is
Yeah.
responsibility. And for me, it's like God is the pinprick. It's that fucking simple. And it's the space around. It's just, yeah. God is profound and simple. Yeah. But yeah, it's beautiful that you said such a quick, no, it's not difficult for me. Because I
Yeah.
came from, I've been doing the spiritual work for a long time. But I came from a Catholic school, and although I've abandoned that, kind of long ago, for me to step into these teachings and really start using this word God has been like, it's it's quite intense, as you have to be. And
But
I think the easiest way for me is to be in the purity of the child.
so I think have the flip side of that. So it's
Interesting.
an easy for me to say no because I feel that, but for me to verbalize that, that's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said, the beliefs that my dad and I share, that's where we would become things would get a little bit
Yes.
come head to head because
Yeah.
that would not be his belief system. For
Yeah.
me to verbalize, I am sovereign and I am free, um, that's not something that a lot of people, that's a big statement.
Correct.
Um, so it's easy for me to say no because I feel that, but
To come out and
if
say
we're
it.
speaking in the English language and we're sharing words, that's a difficult thing. Yeah.
Okay, so meaning there's a
Yeah.
knowing within you that you know you're God, but to now begin
Yeah.
to speak it is another story.
Yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Although
Well,
I don't feel that I need to say that. I think it's a
for sure,
personal, you know,
for sure,
we
for
don't
sure.
need to shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's
again, it
because
all
it's
depends on how you want to create. For me as a
yeah,
woman of mankind who sometimes takes the title of spiritual teacher, um, I cannot help myself from saying these words because it's part of my reality construct at
yeah.
this point in time. And I'm always up for a good, jolly old challenge and to allow people to see the discomfort, or like a space of transformation of maybe they watch a video at this timeline and it feels like, when she says it, there's a little bit of inauthenticity. She's still, not to judge her on it, but it's to say, wow, I mean, the grand statement of I am God, sovereign and free, there seems to be a little bit of discomfort there. And wow, 3 months later, there is absolute knowing embodiment
Yeah.
of that statement, those frequencies and the understanding of what it is. Because yeah, like I said, within the spiral of creation, there's just so much to land and anchor, and then to come out as authentic. And obviously the program within our feedback loop is that everybody's got to have their shit together at all points in time, because that's what the titles have dictated. So you've got this certificate, then you are a master at this thing, and there are no room for mistakes. And that's just not how it is on on the spiritual road. There are
Yeah.
mistakes, there are belief system challenges, there are shifts, there are dissolutions, there are many deaths. And then we find new text, and we start exploring in different ways. And I think we ultimately always come back to, oh my God, the data in the mind, goodbye. I'm just a breath. I'm just a pinprick. Yeah. Anyway, Melissa, any last words of encouragement for humanity, or a perspective that you have at this point in time that you would like to
Um,
close off?
I'm really grateful for being here. I'm really, really stoked to be at this point. Yeah. And thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, a pleasure,
It's been
sister.
a journey. It's been hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for trusting yourself. and
Thank
seeing
you.
yourself in me, because we are one.
Yay.
Thank you, everybody. This has been a Delicately Wild podcast session with my dearest sister, Melissa. And yeah, if you have any questions, please just drop them. Please share this video. You know how algorithms are. And yeah, I do have issues with the algorithm and my contents, my thoughts, my ideas, mine, that is yours, that is ours, that is the one. But other than that, love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting, and thank you, Melissa, again. Ciao.
Mm.